Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Unstructured Unlocked. I'm co-host Michelle Gouveia.
I'm co-host Chris Wells.
And we are joined today by Shane Cassidy, the Executive Vice President of Global Insurance at Capgemini. Welcome, Shane. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
Same here. Can you share a little bit about, to kick us off, what a little bit of your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, great question. I think my day-to-day is probably, if I'm lucky, it's 50% internal and 50% external. We were just talking, Chris and I, about the market before we got started, and it's actually quite busy, even with some of the challenges that are out there. So a lot of what we're doing, so I spend my day on kind of thinking proactively around our customers and their biggest challenges and trying to focus on what sort of solutions can we be putting out there that can help them address the challenges that they're facing, which are real, right? They're board level challenges that they're all dealing with, especially going into a new year and budgets are being created. So we spend a lot of time on that with our strategic customers. And the rest of the time is, just evolving my own business and making sure that we've got the people in the right places. We do a lot of people enablement and training because the nature of the market is changing so fast. The solutions are changing. Even our partnerships are evolving. So there's a lot of that. And then, obviously I got to do the mundane day-to-day operational stuff that is not at all exciting, but part of the job.
Got to pay bills though.
That's right.
You've been at Capgemini a while, and before that you had a pretty varied career up to that point. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you ended up where you are and what's changed over the course of the last decade or so.
Yeah, probably like most people in insurance and technology and consulting, certainly wasn't in my plan when I started. I started with Anheuser-Busch Brewery, and then I made the very obvious switch from selling beer to moving into IT and insurance. I'm sure lots of people are going to follow that path moving forward now that they've witnessed this. It was more a timing, and I'd been with Anheuser-Busch, a great company. I loved it. I had a great time. They were probably one of the best training organizations I've ever seen, the way they focus on their people. But it was around the year 2000 and the talk of technology and all of the impact in the market that was happening. And I had so many friends in this space, and I just say, what, I don't want to be, kind of locked into beer all my life, even though I enjoy it still to this day. And it seemed like that was where the market was heading, and I wanted to be a part of it. Obviously, it wasn't the very beginning, but that was a big time in this space, and I can see what was happening. And even in Capgemini, very interesting story. This was about the time when we came out with our Born on Dating, which was Anheuser-Busch came out with Born on Dating, which was when they put the date and the place and the time down to the minute that the beer was actually produced. And the whole point was they could track the freshness of your beer when it was out in the market. And it all came down to actually an SAP implementation for warehousing and distribution, which gave them a sales strategy. And we were able to track the beer honestly into the bars and make sure that we were rotating it. We had big promotions about, getting same day beer the day it was brewed. And the impact that the technology had on our business was also pretty interesting for me because that was the space I was in. So I made the jump. It took me several years of looking pretty foolish in front of customers because I didn't know a whole lot, but then I started to understand it, and I got to the point where as Capgemini, we decided to verticalize back in 2007, and I jumped on the chance to work with some people I really respected in insurance. I felt they had a great strategy, and we were small at the point, and since then we've become one of the powerhouses in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking about the .com era, I feel like you're foreshadowing some of the discussion to come, but I'm withholding. I'm not going to jump right to it just yet. We should talk about insurance a bit.
Very good. Yeah, it's probably a good idea. We don't want to get to all of the fun stuff right away.
Well, when you started off with beer, I mean, I don't know if insurance is a good follower of that, but I do wonder, Shane, this may be like an out there question. I don't know. Maybe we end up cutting it from the episode. But from your experiences at Anheuser-Busch to what the conversations and the challenges that your insurance clients are facing now, any synergies or similarities, like commonalities that pull through that you're just like that's just a common challenge regardless of your industry that everyone is always trying to solve?
Yeah, well, I think business is business is the one thing I've learned. Running a smart, intelligent, profitable business is got a lot of similarities, regardless of what you're trying to do. Anheuser-Busch was a well-oiled machine. They used data at that point better than most in the industry, and you could see the value of the data. We talked about born on dating and the importance of being able to track that bottle of beer. Insurance is no different. The insights that are available to organizations are pretty much determining whether or not they're profitable right now. If you look at who was profitable over the last 2 years and who wasn't, you can almost guarantee it's because of the data that they had available to them, how they used it, and how their organization was structured to get the best benefit out of that data. And those that were used insights, but also were agile to agile enough to use those insights to determine how they place their investments, won the day. They did good. I mean, there are P&C companies that had low 80s combined ratios, and there's some that had 130 combined ratios. So to me, that is pretty standard. I think, they taught us a lot at Anheuser-Busch in just that you got to find out what's really important to people. And they usually are looking for one of, four things. They're looking for price, they're looking for service, they're looking for relationship, and they're looking for outcomes. And to me, those things still sit true no matter what industry we're in. That's what my customers are looking for from me. They're looking for some combination of that, and finding the magic equation is pretty important. And they're doing the same to all their vendors and their partners and even their products. So yeah, I believe, we always say I'm looking for people with strong business acumen, number one. Just before either technology or being an insurance expert, we can generally convert somebody into understanding enough to do certain roles in the organization if they've got a real good, strong business acumen. So to me, I think that's pretty fundamental.
I like those 4 categories. Could I get you just to repeat them once for our listeners?
Yeah, they're looking for price, service, relationship, and outcome. One of those 4 things is generally primary, and the other 3 are important. You got to figure out which one's number one.
Yeah. So it's just trying to get a little more granular here. As you're thinking about those 4 categories, what are some of the challenges right now in terms of that data, insights, visibility that organizations need to move the needle across those categories?
Ooh, that is a big question. The challenges, and anyone who's listening to this conversation is an insurance person, most likely. I'm not sure many beer people are going to be listening in. So they're all too familiar with the insurance industry and ecosystem, right? We're plagued with legacy that just hasn't, to this point, been remediated. It's challenging to modernize, although I'm sure we'll be talking about just where we are in that process over time. Culturally, it's extremely challenging to change the insurance and I'll say, not just P&C, but life and annuities side of things. It's the processes, the roles are ingrained in the DNA of these organizations. And even when you make really strong technology acquisitions, it doesn't always pay off because the value and the extraction of that value comes through modernizing the service on top of that technology. So you have, it's tough because you'll see a lot of people don't have the data, or they'll say we've got more data than we can ever use or make use of. And a lot of that is, culturally, or they don't have the right operating model in place just yet to figure out how to extract that value for their own purposes. Now, it's not universal. There's certainly successes out there, but there's a lot of challenges. I'll tell you, one of the big learnings that the industry probably saw was coming out of COVID, right? The COVID market changed every everybody's opinion or thinking of what do they need to offer in that market to who, through what channels, that, for what reasons. And they had felt they just invested over the last decade hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars around modernization and digitization, but yet they still didn't have the agility and they still didn't have the data at their fingertips that they wanted. So I think that was a bit of a wake-up call to insurers that, spending money for money's sake in some modernization, if it doesn't have the outcomes that you need, then you got to relook at what you're doing and how you're going about it. But the challenges are many and deep. Good news is they're probably they're all addressable, but they come with pain and suffering and time and money.
On that, Shane, I think would welcome your thoughts on this, but my assumption is that the desired outcome, a lot of times can be impacted by the partnership choices, the vendors, what is available as in terms of capabilities and offering. So when you're working with your clients and they come to you and say, this is what we're looking to solve for, whether it's price, service, relationship, outcome, how do you go about helping them refine the scope for the types of partnerships that they should be seeking, and then ultimately help guide them in a direction that gets them to that desired outcome?
It's a good question, and it's evolving every day because the technology continues to evolve, and I don't think anyone would have predicted 5 years ago what we're trying to accomplish today. And that starts me thinking around, I'm not sure I can predict 5 years from now, though there's plenty of programs we're involved in that are 10-year programs. And so, we've been trying to advise our customers around agility and building for flexibility over time, because what we do know is access to data, availability of data, new tooling, integration capabilities are all accelerating at such a pace that what you want to be able to do is take care of it. I think, tools like Guidewire and Duck Creek and others have brought in the ability to have a very modern, flexible core system that is resilient and does the core processing in the cloud, gives you what you need. So now the question is, how do we build around that for those capabilities? And there's other technologies out there, and there's some that are good and some that are getting better, but there is now, no question that you can have a very reliable modern core, which gives you the foundation, I think, to build from and develop those capabilities. A lot of the work, and a lot of our P&C customers especially have modernized their core platforms or in the process of modernization. And those are very tough programs, and they require a lot of fortitude because it's about staying focused on the outcome very much. They can become technology software installations after 6 to 9 months when they really are about delivering that outcome. So helping our customers stay focused on the value realization throughout. Why are we doing this from the beginning, and trying to help remind them of that and keep them on track in working with them is something we spend a lot of energy on, and it pays off in the end when we're able to meet those demands that they were looking to solve.
Yeah, on that topic of value realization, what's the breakdown in terms of level of effort for you all between the tech piece of it and then the people piece of it, right? Retraining folks, changing workflows, optimizing how people do their jobs.
Yeah, I would say way too small on the second piece right now, way more on the technology side. All these transformations are more ecosystem plays and leveraging a broad set of tools on top of the core, your tool being one of them. The focus we've been, and has been one of my mantras, is we need to move towards that second component far more consistently. And it's tougher to get customers to invest in that from the get-go. And so it hasn't been, but I think, again, COVID has helped open some eyes around the value of that. So we push for what we call VRO, Value Realization Office, in every one of our deals, which isn't change management. Change management is, software, standing up software, teaching you how to use it. Value realization is roles, responsibility, operating model, extracting the value of that technology after implementation or, as you're executing.
Absolutely. So Shane, that's a recurring theme, is that the people side of the change management, the new tools, all of that is something that's a bit undervalued or not focused on as it should be. As you think about the way the industry is changing right now, what in particular are the hardest parts for folks as they adapt to new processes and new systems?
Well, it's definitely just people and behavior. People are uncomfortable with change. I don't know how else to say it. You can offer them a platform that provides opportunity to make their lives a little easier. We've been focused on moving the underwriter from an operational underwriter to a sales underwriter for decades. I've been having the conversation around underwriting workbenches and installing technology, yet you still see certain underwriters get back to doing operations, and they're in the back office when people want them selling. So, I think that's part of it. The other part of it I hear now, and I know we'll get to things like Gen AI, but people worry about their jobs. And there's a lot of people out there that think that their jobs are going to go away once the technology is there, because the technology is there to remove, all of those things that are wastes of energy and time and can be done in an automatic way, which consumes a lot of people's work hours these days. And so there's a pushback even before these programs start on technology change, let alone the process change. And, not everybody is a salesperson. That's one thing insurers should know, right? Just because somebody's an underwriter doesn't mean that their ability to interact with, brokers and agents is consistent just because they have the technology. So, you're going to have to start hiring different types of people for different types of roles than we probably historically have had. The role of a claims adjuster, the role of an, underwriter support agent. These things are changing, and they should, because the nature of what's available to them from a technology standpoint, from an insight perspective, from a data perspective is changing. And what the experience expectation from the market is, the customers, and I use customers kind of broadly, it's internal, it's external, is changing as well. And, they expect to see a different experience and interaction than they historically have gotten. And it's tough. So all those things combined, I think, make it very challenging for insurers to push that change into the levels, right? You'll hear the people at the top level talk about it and the importance of it, and they recognize it, but pushing it all the way down into the execution levels is challenging. And maybe the last thing I would say is organizations usually aren't built to have that capability internally, because it's moving so fast that there isn't a lot of expertise around role modification support and looking at the org structure and how it should evolve as the technology changes. So you have to rely on external people, and quite frankly, there's not, even there isn't massive loads of people externally, because we're all kind of walking through this at the same time. We've seen some success working with some of the hyperscalers and others who to say, forget insurance, think retail, think telematics, think other areas where that are already operating in a far more advanced way. And you can see some of the emerging insurance players, they certainly have the right idea, right? They have no history, so they start with a different mindset. They've got different challenges, but I think it's inevitable. It's just hard in this industry.
Well, and it's not a one size fits all, right? Like even within an insurance carrier, different lines of insurance are going to be at different points in their digital transformation, availability of data sets, the ability to make those data driven decisions or automate just based on what's available. And so it's not a blanket fix where one day everyone can just snap a finger and it's the new way. It takes time, and it's iterative to get to that end state.
There's no end state. That's what I would say. And we used to start saying, change is not a destination. It's your new lifestyle, right? It is just that you have to be comfortable in an ever changing environment. And we haven't even got to the point where we're just at the change piece yet. So, yes, I would wholly agree. Like a large organization, mid-sized organization, even a small organization, it's going to be rolled out over time, those changes based on priorities and investment in the market and everything else. But that attitude that is, once it's changed, it's not now that's the new next 40 years of your life. It should be, this is the starting point of our transformation.
Yeah. That raises a question for me. You talked about how there were competing priorities earlier, and all of them, if acted upon, had varying levels of pain to accomplish. Like, from where you sit, what are the top 3 on the hit list of, transformative processes to accomplish?
What are the top 3 target areas?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Not sure if I've ever thought about it like that. You can look at it from a pure combined ratio and where's the biggest areas to address. And I think different companies have different challenges that they need to focus on. But I would say the first thing is probably building the foundational ecosystem. I'm not just talking about core insurance, but one of which that can grow with you for the next 30 years. The next 20 years, next 30 years, or however that may be. And so that's probably number one. I think underwriting is a massive target for us right now in the market. I don't go anywhere where we're not talking about underwriting. You can see the winners, we're out there forcing adverse selection on the losers over the last couple of years, picking off all the right risk and pushing all the bad risk at the wrong prices out to the competition. So, either delivering really profitable underwriting or pushing adverse selection. And then, it's hard to ignore claims, just because it's such a large portion of where the money is spent. I think those are probably the 3 big areas. And the first one to me, Ty, said we're in a lot of cost optimization, but it's really about modernizing your organization, right-sizing your ecosystem so that you're not overspending on something that is restrictive in your ability to grow or change. And so that's become a pretty hot topic for us.
Okay. All right. Then the other side of the coin, same 3, but rank them in terms of pain.
Ooh. I'd say number 1 is the most painful, the one, modernizing the ecosystem because it's just so complex. I would say probably claims might be number 2. I think claims and, underwriting, there's things you can do on the underwriting side. We've got great underwriters out there in a lot of organizations, and sometimes they can use some simple capabilities and they can really have a big impact. I think claims, because it's more of it's such a big process, and it's fully standardized really across these organizations. It's a little bit more effort to move them, and looking for areas you can synchronize and get, kind of values from the, scale, like building at scale claims modernization. We've got some customers that are trying to go from, 15% touchless to 75% touchless. And that sounds huge, but what we're finding out, number one, it's hard to do, but if done right, it actually has a significant uplift on your customer sat scores, because you're taking away the challenges that your policyholders had going through a claims and making their life easier. And it's a lot of outbound communication and all kinds of things that can actually decrease your cost while driving up satisfaction, which, to me is like the holy grail. If you can, there's one more, and you can do it while lowering your cost. All three of those things generally happen, right? Because it's cheaper to automate. You got a happier customer. But those are big efforts generally.
Absolutely. Do you feel like for underwriting and claims in particular, or either one, whichever one you want to answer, do you feel like the tool stack has sort of started to settle down, or is it still a pretty volatile space?
No, I think the tools are available right now. I mean, I think tools like Indico and the ability to, we had this thing, what did we do? It was called cognitive document processing that we had built like 6 years ago, which essentially was on the claim side, and people, you'd get mail or you'd get emails or you get all kinds of things. And, we were able to just automate out the stuff that should be automated. Like, there would be something like a lawsuit, and a mail came in that was predicting a lawsuit, but they wouldn't open that for 14 days because they couldn't get to it. And by that time, all right, suit is on. And we realized, you could salvage, half of your legal fees if you would just open, scan, and route that to your internal legal department. Wow. The minute it came in, which isn't, we're not talking, this isn't crazy far-fetched technology either. This is, pretty standard. I mean, there was some, handwriting analysis and convert to data stuff that was pretty cool, and not at the level that is out there even with you guys today. But so as I look at it, there's not like there's a technology excuse of why we can't do things if you ask.
Sure.
Other than budget.
Yep. Budget and the cost of adoption, which
budget
often falls.
Then adoption is the fun one. I was actually with the chief transformation officer of Indico yesterday. Is that their name? In Gouveia. You're familiar with them?
I've heard the name. I don't know them well.
They were motorist out of Columbus.
Yeah.
And they started their transformation in 2015 and said, 130-year-old company. And I'll give them all the credit in the world. They said, and no, not my customer. And they said, we are going to greenfield our business. We're going to rebuild from the ground up. And this year they will have gone from 27 policy systems to 2. And they have and they rebranded. They just killed motor. I mean, they just started a new company. And wow. It's an amazing story. And like, you want to talk about fortitude, like the guts it takes to make that call and execute it. And it worked, and it paid off.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So Shane, I wanted to ask you, as you were talking about where we are and sort of the landscape and the ecosystems, do you feel like, specifically for claims and underwriting, do you feel like the tool stack has started to sort of settle down, or is that still pretty volatile?
Well, I think the tools are there to deliver a really good capability. Now, are the tools going to continue to evolve? Absolutely. The market will always evolve, and you'll have big players that'll continue to look for solutions that give them a greater opportunity. And you'll look for startups, especially in these spaces, to look for concepts that can have an impact for them and their customers. But I don't look at the tooling as an excuse for why the capability doesn't exist. I mean, maybe budget, maybe adoption is a bigger challenge, and I get it. Right, there's not enough money to do everything and modernize everything, but the technology exists. Our ability to, your tooling, some stuff we've built in the past, your ability to take information in and automate it. We talked about one of our customers who's going from 15%. Their goal is to go from 15% touchless to 75% touchless claims, while improving their customer satisfaction. And if you think about that, it's, it hits it hits so hard at success because you're hitting three things. You're hitting, the automation side of things, so simplification. You're looking at, your customer stats going up, and oh, by the way, it's reducing your costs. And generally reduce your costs of both IT if you're able to shut things off, and you should be focused on shutting things off, as well as the people side of things. And so we're able to do that today. And some of that is, in the end, then is just a commitment that that's what we are going to do. It scares a lot of people in the beginning, again, about our jobs, or can we automate out, like we're known for our touch and our care, but customers want early, often information around their claim that can be done without the intervention of a human being, and that can be done in a way that makes the customer very happy, and they're getting those answers before they need to ask for them. And believe me, that's not where people want the communication, the live communication. And so I think the technology exists. Will it evolve? Absolutely, unquestionably. But does it exist today? And is it does it feel like it's standard? I don't know about standardizing, but it's I think it's well understood at this point.
Okay.
Well, Shane, I was just going to ask a question. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this, because obviously with any automation or business, goal, there's usually a technology component, right? I think what we've been seeing, and it sounds like what you're alluding to in the conversations you've had with your customers, is this goal of having technology be the core of making those changes, right? Of going from 15 to 75% touchless, for improving that, that customer score. I think it's still going on. But for a little while, I feel like the industry was going towards a product solution to solve some of those things, right? With parametric insurance coming out, like the whole goal of that, right, was to automate those claims payouts, was to make it touchless, was to take any decision point away and say, if X, then Y, right? And so I'm just curious, are parametric solutions still at the forefront of some of those strategies that you're seeing, or is it completely shifted to like a tech stack change?
I don't know. It's not necessarily a tech stack change entirely. Yeah, parametrics it's still definitely involved. I will tell you that, and I'm not going to bring up names, but this customer that wanted to go from 15 to 75, they could go from 15 to 45 with an attitude change, right? With the belief that was the right thing to do. It wasn't that they needed, the technology necessarily to do it. It was part of their business strategy, had to be said, right? It's not measuring you on how many times you talk to the customer, where you got to measure you on how happy the customer is and the cost and the accuracy of our claim. So I don't know that it's all tech stack. It's certainly not all tech stack, but I think as things evolve, it certainly is important, and will, and it's going to definitely get to the last maybe mile or so, maybe the last several miles, and in some cases it might take you most of the entire journey. So, but yeah, no, that's still absolutely relevant in the market.
It's funny how we improve the things we measure, isn't it? Even if they're not the most useful.
Yeah.
I have held out as long as I can. I have to ask the question, where do you see Gen AI having an impact? And I guess let's keep it focused on underwriting and claims, unless there's something more interesting that I don't know about. I'm not an insurance guy.
Well, we're in the middle of, or in the beginning, middle of, or we've executed and begun working on so many POCs in Gen AI, and everywhere I go, it is AI. Gen AI is definitely the number one topic. It is screeched to the top. There's really two ways we look at it. One is in SDLC life cycle, so just technology deployment, so using it across the technology implementation, servicing, management, absolutely, and it will have an impact all the way across that, and providing speed and efficiency in that process. So that's a great thing for not just insurers. That's universal, right? It's just the nature of it. The other side of it is the business use cases, and we've already started with many business use cases. Certainly, claims and underwriting are great. Some of the very, very simple ones, have big impact. Just looking at supporting a claims agent, and I forget that we had a name for it, but it's basically claims summary. Where you get today, like customer has, a claims agent has a claims summary on the desk, but believe me, there's way more information available out there internally, externally, through other tools that they could have. And what we built, very simple kind of Gen AI tool set that can bring all that data and put it into a single pane of glass that gives them almost everything they need to know to support them through that claim process in a way faster, more accurate way. And same on the underwriting side. Maybe even more impactful, bringing in way more data to allow underwriters to be, speedy, efficient, effective, and most importantly, accurate, profitable. And a very similar kind of use case for both, and pretty impactful. And it's not just that, one of the outcomes that we realized is not only does it provide you this data, but something that may scare a lot of people is the level of skill required to perform the same level of outcome goes down. So instead of having a 20-year expert, you could have a 5-year person perform at the same level as a 20-year expert by using these summary capabilities as an example. And what we're seeing is, my expectation is it's pervasive. It's going to be into every component of the entire life cycle, the policy life cycle from start to finish, most likely. And customers are just going to have to me, it's more importantly, build Gen AI level muscle in the organization so that they can leverage it and get the best out of it, as opposed to, picking off use case after use case. They're everywhere, obviously, but it's, it's still early days. So we're seeing, kind of really cool outcomes, even though, we're probably, and I don't think anyone's too far ahead of us. So it's, you're in the early days of POC results, and now people looking for funding going into next year to start putting all of this into action.
One more question on that thought. So you don't need the 20 years of experience to do the job anymore, at least maybe not in the majority of cases of doing the job. Is that 20 years of experience required to build an adequate Gen AI solution?
I think, certainly not the technical solution, but
but
likely
definitely not
in helping define and get to the right solution. Yes, it is helpful to have them as part of the team. Absolutely, because they understand, if they could do this best, what would they need, and how would we go about acquiring that data in a snap of a finger, and have it all at your fingertips. And what things could you automate out that you don't need to do in this process that's keeping you held back? And so, but it takes 20 years of experience to get through your organizational blockers, which sit there to stop you from, making bad decisions. That's what we'll say, right? Sometimes they're just blockers for blockers' sake, because that's how the process is. But sometimes, they're there for a reason. And a lot of that you can automate out as well, so that you don't need that 20 years. But yeah, they're important in creating the solution, and, yet to be seen, how much it does change the workforce, but it has the potential to have a significant workforce impact.
Yeah, that's a whole episode right there. We'll have you back.
on that thread, Shane, I guess the blockers there, or the people that know the process, have the insights on why decisions are made. A lot of that is also, they're probably structuring the decision making to avoid stepping on landmines, right? So there's the regulatory side that we haven't touched on yet, and we're seeing a lot of we're talking to a lot of insurers and then obviously startups as well that are looking to solve the concerns in that realm, right? Of the data security, data privacy. If you're using these generative AI platforms, how does this impact downstream what you can use in your pricing modeling and what you file with the states, and making sure that it's not completely a black box. Obviously, you're not giving away your pricing secret sauce, but you have to be able to identify those elements. So, what have you been thinking about in that vein specifically as it relates to Gen AI?
Yeah, that's probably the number one blocker in the industry from going faster. It is a shared concern by everybody, and rightfully so, down to my own legal, who has an interest in every contract, regardless how small it is, when it comes to Gen AI, right? They are deep into it to make sure we are not saying anything. Now, the interesting part about it is there really isn't a regulatory requirement yet. There's a lot of talk about that we all know it's coming, and they're holding their ability to hold you accountable if they feel whatever you're doing should be probably looked at negatively. But the smart folks are pushing their own process and messaging and forewarning around what we're doing to address what we think should be regulatory challenges, so that we're proactively pushing to the regulators what we're doing about it, how we're addressing it, almost as if we can help write whatever it ends up being written by the regulators in the marketplace. You almost have to, because it really is pretty opaque, and that is another space that's going to evolve. Quite frankly, I can't predict what's going to happen in 2 years and how much more intelligent the capabilities get, and therefore, how do you stop it potentially from accessing data you didn't want it to, and can you?
Would you even know? Which
you didn't know. Exactly. And so that's going to be an interesting space. But you're absolutely right. That is a conversation every time we talk about it, and we're coming up with strategies to try and preempt the challenges. But to a degree, you don't know how accurate you're going to be just yet, but you can kind of feel that something's coming. So yeah, it's that I wish I could predict. God, I wish I had a little bit of a time machine to go out a couple of years.
Yeah,
well, that's a question we can't ask. We usually ask, "What's your outlook for the next 5 to 10 years?" I guess we'll avoid
no crystal ball for Shane.
Yeah.
No, I think it's also, to your point, it's really dependent on the technology, right? Like there's a future where the best performance on models, the performance you need, requires you to have a massive farm of compute, and the sort of scrappy do-it-yourselfer open source models won't be able to deliver that. And so do these models get regulated like utilities or something crazy like that? I also would like to join you in that time machine.
Yeah. I mean, you could see a point, and we've done some things around predictive selling, and it starts to get a little hairy, but these are back office people thinking about this. But you could look at instead of waiting for your policy requests to come through digitally, understanding different markers in customer journeys in their life, and they do this on the life side better right now. You have a baby or you have this, and you're going to get sent stuff. Obviously, if you buy a car, then you get X, but selling that full set of services, looking at people in different markets, moving, and really, pushing out offers much faster through leveraging this technology that can somehow figure out way more likely if they're ready to buy based on those triggers. You're not even, it's not even responsive anymore. Now you're just pushing out, you're pushing product to all the right people, and those that are the smartest, and may be able to have, a domination effect in the marketplace. I don't know. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm happy to be in the space we are in, because we get to work in it, and we get to follow the journey with everybody else and keep trying to push the market ahead.
That's another recurring theme of this podcast, is how much more interesting insurance is than people give it credit for.
It's so true. It's so true. It's funny because I always start with, what do you do? And I'm like, I work in insurance technology, and we all have a good chuckle. And then I say, but really, it's pretty interesting. You'd be surprised how interesting and how fast paced it is, at least from my vision, where I'm sitting and with our customers. So you're absolutely right.
Great. Well, at this point, I'm going to call it. This has been another episode of Unstructured Unlocked. Our guest today has been Shane Cassidy, Executive Vice President of Global Insurance at Capgemini. Shane, thanks a lot.
Thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure. Take care.